Hello everyone, Know Your Heroes proudly presenting International Women's Day special with Sara Shabbir, an aerospace research engineer. I am Adiba Ghazal and accompanied by Fatma Najib Khan. Sara has BE Mechanical Engineering followed by Ph.D. Mechanical from the University of Nottingham. She has been awarded Marie Curie Early Stage Researcher Scholarship. She has over 6 years field experience as a mechanical engineer with Leonardo Helicopters and as a Marie Curie Early Stage Researcher and presently working as a senior solutions engineer with Gobin Performance Plastics, Omniseal Solutions. She has over 6 to 10 published papers and conferences representation.
Welcome on board, Sarah. We are excited to have you with us. Sarah, before we begin with our usual set of questions, we'd like to learn about what have you done with your PhD? What was your research focus on?
Sure. So my focus was aerospace focused, but it was essentially targeted mainly at helicopter gearboxes. So I researched oil seals for shaft sealing, so mainly high-speed applications on rotary shafts. So it was essentially sealing oil into the gearbox to make sure that it doesn't leak, and the challenges associated with that, specifically to helicopter applications, because traditional civil aviation is a little bit different on the engines, but with the gearboxes, there really is a specific set of challenges. So my PhD was primarily focused on tackling that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I would like to ask, what does your usual day looks like?
So I think it's very different now that I work in industry. Typically, over here, it's you're expected to get to work a little bit earlier than we would in Pakistan. So I'm usually at my desk between 7:45 in the morning. Um, and yeah, I would pretty much start by going into the lab, starting up some experiments, turning on some test rigs, spend maybe an hour and a half there, then come back to my desks. And then typically I would start emails, work, different types of things. On many and most days, I tend to stop after lunch. I go home a little bit earlier because I work with the US, and so when they start to wake up in California, towards the end of the day, so then I tend to work into the evening sometimes. So I tend to take some time in the middle of, um, and so yeah, I would typically then go home maybe by 2:30, and then start working maybe again at 5 until 8 p.m. sometimes. So it really depends on whether it's a meeting heavy day or an experimentally lab heavy day.
So, Sarah, since you've mentioned about juggling different time zones with your work, what type of work generally excites you on Monday mornings? Because we all know that after weekends, Monday mornings are a bit heavy.
I completely agree. Monday mornings are not the best. Luckily, today's a Friday. Um, I would say what really excites me to maybe get to work on a Monday morning is really on less on the meeting side, but more on the data analysis, testing side. So since I work in R&D, I do work a little bit on simulation projects, but primarily my focus is experiments and test rigs. And so on a Monday morning, just to go in and see the test rigs been running over the weekend, what happened, look at the results, look at the data, look at the performance, and that kind of thing, to be honest. Nobody likes to go to Monday morning and sit in meetings. So definitely it's the interesting side of the work, which is we're always learning new things, and you're always facing the unexpected, and sometimes it's very disappointing, but it's always exciting because you don't know what you're going to encounter that morning.
Since you have mentioned it all, I would like to ask, what are your personal or professional achievements or accomplishments that you are most proud of?
That's an interesting question. I feel like definitely I would say there's not one particular accomplishment or professional that I would be super proud of. In general, I feel like I'm very grateful and very happy that I finished my PhD and now I work. And I particularly did not want to stay in academia, so I'm very happy that I could find a job that was so specific to my PhD. In general, I think there's definitely a lot more personal accomplishments that I would be proud of, from living in multiple different countries, adjusting to different places, different languages, different cultures, which I think is more challenging than the work itself, because from the technical aspect, it's something that you're passionate about, something that you're excited about, but to do that, you have to really drag yourself across the world and go to these different places, and that is really challenging, to be honest. And that's something that I'm very proud of, that I have been able to find some semblance of home in these different places that I've lived in, and manage to somehow be comfortable and happy, which is something that is very comforting.
Sarah, and thank you for highlighting the realities of life with us and with our listeners as well, because it's not just obviously technical work that's going to ask you to bring out the best in you, but it's going to be the environments as well that you face, and ultimately they would basically be provide they would require a considerable effort from your side to get into the adjustment. So I'm going to connect my next questions with something that Adiba has asked. Adiba asked you about your accomplishments. I'm going to ask you about, since you're involved in a lot of R&D and you've done your PhD as well, and now you're working in a similar sector, what time was it then when in which you were not really happy with the outcome of your work, or probably just the way the things turned out? Would you want to share any of such incident with us?
Sure. I think it's a really nice question, and I think the answer for someone who does R&D is that honestly, almost all the time, I face that I'm unhappy with something that I've done, or something that an experiment that I've done a certain way, or I forgot to do a certain step, or I look back sometimes at some of the work that I did during my PhD, not 2-3 years ago, and I'm like appalled at how horrible I feel like it was. And I think that's something that I've learned to now be more, like, less hard on myself about it, because I feel like the work that I'm doing now, I look back 5 years from now and say, oh my God, that was so bad. So I think with there's been multiple times when experiments have failed, and I've been very disappointed or unhappy with the quality of work that I've you know put out or that I've done. And I think it's because we're always learning, we're always learning something new and learning a better way to do it. So I think um, when I'm doing the work, I'm happy with it. But then when I look back retrospectively, I think I could have done better. Um, in particular, I think in the first year of my PhD, there were so many things that I designed a test rig for my research, and looking back there, I would have done it really differently. And I was very unhappy. Now looking back, I'm unhappy with the things that I didn't incorporate into it, or the things that I did that I feel like I could have done better. But I think it's important to remember that in an instance, you do the best you can with the information and experience that you have at that point. And so definitely with, test rig design is not my area of expertise. And so maybe I should have taken help, I should have asked around, but, I didn't. And I feel like that could have been better optimized.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Since you have mentioned it all, and you have highlighted that you have learned to go easy on yourself, I would like to, and you have mentioned that you were able to cope and you were able to found your home in different places and countries. So I would like to ask, what is your super trait or superpower which you believe has helped you reach to this stage? Because a lot of people are not of this mindset. A lot of people try to go easy on themselves, but they keep on bashing themselves subconsciously or consciously that, oh no, I have to do it, I have to get it. So let's talk about
I personally don't think there's any superpower, super trait behind it. I think it's a very, like, specific concoction of lots of support from family and friends, and lots of luck is as well involved, obviously. But I definitely feel like I have an approach where I try to just um, I'm in general, I'm quite driven, so I don't procrastinate. So I don't face the problem of being unmotivated, or being finding it difficult to start things, or go on. But having said that, I think I can be very mechanical and robotic about the way that I perform tasks sometimes, where I just do it. But I think it's important to find, like, what I really try to focus on doing to be able to continue, otherwise you just burn out, is find some form of happiness or contentment in what I'm doing. So if there's one aspect of the work or the task or the job that I don't like, I try to find some aspects or some positive aspects that I do like, and then try to focus on that. Because if you get caught up too much in the neck, because nothing is perfect, right? And there will be circumstances or some aspects of your situation where you're like, I don't like this, or I don't like this part of the job. When I was doing my PhD, there's so much pressure to publish, and there's so much pressure to do things perfectly, and that's something that I did not like, and something that I felt that I wasn't super good at. But there were other sides of it that I did like, and if I spent more time focusing on what I enjoyed rather than whining or being upset about what I didn't, then I had an overall more positive experience. And because I experienced it in a more positive way, I was more motivated and okay to go on and to continue without being super down or super, unhappy. And I think that is the important the part that I think is important, is really trying to find the pockets or parts of things that you enjoy, and try to focus your energy on those aspects, because there'll always be parts of things that you don't enjoy, and you have to do them anyway. It's just a part of life, right?
Yeah, thank you for your wonderfully explained answer. Sarah, my next question was actually related to something that you already talked about, but I'll still ask you the question, and I'd like to have some sort of an explanation for specifically for young listeners. What was one breakout moment that you remember that literally did demotivate you, or the things that you talked about burned you out of the routine? Or since you've also mentioned about being robotic into routine tasks, and we often find ourselves in, specifically while we are studying or being in academia, this occurs a lot. You tend to have a robotic lifestyle. So how did you cope out with your breakout moment, and what would you suggest to us and our listeners as well?
I think for me, my breakout moment or my breakdown moment or something, a time where I really struggled was maybe like halfway through my PhD. There was a pandemic, and so being an experimental PhD student, I struggled a lot, because not only was I locked at home in a country that was, not where my family was, but I was living alone, and I didn't see many people. It was really like isolation. Um, and I think I found it the way that I coped, or in general that I cope, is really to become, like you said, very mechanical, and just do things like ticking things off the list just to get by. And something that you asked, what would I recommend people to do in such instances? I think reaching out and asking for help is really important. And I don't think it makes you weak. In fact, I think you're stronger if you're able to voice what you're experiencing, because you'll find that you're not the only person who's experiencing that. And I think talking to other PhD students, or my peers, or my parents, or my family members, or friends about what I was experiencing, especially talking to people who are in similar circumstances as you'll really find you're not alone. And you always think that you're the anomaly. You always think that, oh, it's just me. It's never just you. Multiple people face similar problems. Like in academia, there's so much pressure. In jobs, there's pressure for something else. In family life, there's other pressure, whatever it is, but you're not alone, and it's very easy to feel like you are. And so I think voicing it, talking about it, reaching out to people, friends, and feeling like, I would submit a paper to a journal and I would get a reject, right? And I would think, oh my God, I'm the only person who's ever been rejected from a journal submission. No, it's not true. Like, I felt like that, and I was very embarrassed, and I felt stupid. I really felt stupid. But then when I talked to people around me, my peers, other students, and they were also sometimes receiving either desk rejections or revise and resubmit or whatever. But the what really helped me was realizing that it's not just me. I'm not stupid. Everyone faces failure. Everyone faces challenges. And so I think being able to recognize that and then speak up about it without feeling ashamed about it is really something that is important, to be able to get through this journey without coming out with severe, mental health problems and stuff like that.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for explaining it so well. I would like to ask, did your first job or first boss help you becoming what you are saying or analyzing it, or did it help you having a good or best experience in the industry?
Yeah, I'd say my first boss would have been my PhD supervisor, and he definitely was. I learned a lot from him. I have to say, I learned a lot from him. Um, it's definitely challenging when the first boss you have in general it's not from your culture, not from your country, and so there are gaps in culture and understanding. Um, But I think working with someone or working for someone who is motivating and doesn't insult you and doesn't like demean you and instead is encouraging is really important. And it's important to recognize that some bosses are toxic, and it's not you, it's them. And no one should be putting you down. In fact, they should be encouraging you, and being around that energy is, I think, really important for sure.
So Sarah, talking about obviously toxicity around in not only in academia but in industry as well. There's also a lot of pressure. You've mentioned already about the pressure in academia, but then there's pressure in industry as well of meeting deadlines, working in teams, and it's not really important that every person that you meet in a team is going to agree with you. So my next question is basically going to be, what, if you would want to share with us any challenging situation that you've faced throughout your, academia and your industry journey, and specifically any challenges that you met, which were related to, closing in on a deadline or having a dispute in a closed team. How did you deal with those challenges?
I think during my PhD, it's more independent work. So while there is collaboration, I was usually the leader of my own project, and so I found it less challenging to enforce what I wanted to do, or in general in that sense. So I think more of that challenge I faced is in industry when I'm working, because like you said, you have teams. And for me in particular, I don't just work with people who I meet. I work with people in the US and in Asia, and some of us have never met in person. And having never met in person doesn't it's harder to work because there's miscommunication in emails and teams meetings and things like that. So I think I definitely have faced challenges like that, and in gaps in communication. And I think the best way to deal with it, particularly in industries where we work, where we're engineering companies, we are obviously um, the sales side of it and all of that matters, but we are technical companies, engineering companies. And so when you work with engineers, the best way to reason something out is logic and technical details. So for example, if I'm discussing with someone and we disagree on something, I always like to add in my emails, like I give my reasoning. I say, this is what I think, this is why I think it, this is the reason why I think it, this is my data that I've based my reasoning on, but please challenge me. That's how we'll grow. And I always mention that at the end of my emails. If there's we're running into like difference of opinion, it's like, please feel free to challenge me and also give your supporting reason why you feel the way you do, and we can always discuss it. So I think in situations like that, instead of being very assertive and saying, no, I think what I think is right, or I think this it should be done this way, it's better, or I found it's better, and you can get through more to such people because we're all very logically driven people. We're very technical engineers, so we all can appreciate and understand a logical reasoning kind of a viewpoint. So I would say, okay, this is what I think, this is why I think it. I think it should be done like this. From X experience and Y experience, this is what I found. However, please do feel free to, provide your reasoning, and we can discuss it. And then I would just set up a Teams call and have an open discussion around it. And then at the end, also just say, like, we have to reach some decision. We might not all agree. Let's just have a vote. Or I would sometimes, if I really think that that should be done a certain way, I'll speak up, or I'll say, let's try your way. No worries, like, it's fine. And I think being open to other people's ideas and not being so like not getting offended. Like if somebody disagrees with you, it's not personal. Like this is a professional environment. Difference of opinion is natural, and not taking it personally and getting angry or upset is really key in maintaining your composure. And if you maintain it like that, then people also tend to respect you, and next time someone will say, let's try it your way. So in that sense, that's how I would tackle it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Like you have mentioned that you have since we all are engineers and we know this logical background, and you also mentioned that that certain things need to be done this way. This is what the gut feeling says, that I know despite of all the logics and reasons, I feel that this is going to happen this way, so we should do it this way. So, were there any role models or mentors that you found during your life or professional life that have helped you polishing your mindset, your outlook, or your aura to think like that?
I would really separate the mentor and the role model, because for me, role model is someone who I've not necessarily met or interacted with super, closely. And I feel like I have many role models I've seen. You guys are role models for me, Adiba, I mean, Fatma, I've never met you and I've never spoken to you that much, and I don't know what kind of work you do, but the kind of work that Adiba you do is so inspirational to me. So I would say you are a role model for me. When I attended previous sessions and I've seen the kind of things that Sarah Qureshi does, she's a role model for me. To see people who are women, who are strong women, driven women who come from a similar background as myself, those kind of people I see more as role models. But I wouldn't say that these people are technical mentors or mentors for me because I haven't worked up close to them. So I already mentioned some role models that I have, and I think for technical mentors, I would have to say my PhD supervisor. He was definitely one of the most important mentors that I've had. He definitely was very encouraging, and he taught me a lot of things. And there's so many things that he taught me that I still use and think about to today. So yeah.
Sorry, you already mentioned about your PhD supervisor. We love to know about any other male allies that you've met throughout your journey, because obviously talking about aerospace and then specifically talking about sealing components and whatever work you're involved into, it's very technical and somewhat, yes, male dominated. So we definitely love to know about more of male allies who have had a role to play in your professional life.
I think for sure, apart from my PhD supervisor, it would be my boss who hired me into my job. He's a male, but and often we get, we have certain perceptions of people, and we take a step back because we're not sure how people will be and people appear to be, especially when there are cultural differences. And I have two bosses. One is a French guy, one is a German guy, and they both are very, very supportive in very different ways, but they're very supportive. And I think they've been huge allies for me in the sense that, often I'll attend meetings and be the only woman on a call, and I never feel it. I don't feel that I am the only woman on the call, and because my opinion is respected just as much, just because I come from the technical background where I can put in my input or my opinion and it would be valid. So I would say definitely my current bosses. Other male allies, I would have to say, maybe would be one of my A level lecturers or teachers when I was in Karachi. um, they were very encouraging as well. I think one of my physics professors, or not professors but lecturers, teachers, is the reason that I really started to really love physics. And not a male ally in the sense where they did something specifically for me, but they were such good teachers that they made me love the subject, and they were very encouraging.
Talking about male allies, I'll not create any kind of biasness over here, and I would like to ask you about the importance of female leadership. And did you able to find one easily, or how was the experience about it?
I have to say, I definitely have always lacked the presence of female leadership in my experience, and it's something that I have always felt very like a void of. I remember during my PhD, by the end of it, I was sick of working with and for men. I was really annoyed of it because at some point you realize there's really no one who you can relate to, and I think the lack of it is what I can comment on, because I've never had a female boss that I was super involved with, or someone who really I got to work with very closely. Towards the end of my PhD, when I was leaving, the director of my group became a woman. But I didn't have a chance to work with her because really I left then. So I think it's really important. And while I cannot comment on how that would have impacted me because I've never had the pleasure of that experience, I think the lack of it is definitely something that I've always noticed. And frustration, you feel frustrated sometimes because it's just something where it's just not there. Unfortunately, it's just not there. Um, I've never had the chance to work with many women either, to be very honest. And so I think that if I think had I had someone like that, I would have been able to relate more. I would have been able to feel more, feel like whatever I wanted was really within reach. Something that I could accomplish because I've seen someone else accomplish it, and someone who I could relate to. But I never had that. And I think what you guys are doing is really facilitating that, which is amazing.
Thank you, Sarah. We're definitely, yes, bringing out role models for, like you've differentiated very well, differentiated between role models and mentors. And we obviously feel that having female role models into our lives, and specifically for young women as well, it's going to help us a lot. Sarah, now let's talk about some of your accomplishments and awards and scholarships. Will you please share with us your, like Adiba introduced you, you're a Marie Curie scholarship winner. Would you want to please share the details of it and any other awards as well?
Sure. So it was yeah, I had applied for a Marie Curie fellowship kind of a thing. So we're called ESRs, early stage researchers, and to apply for that, you have to, well, it has to be your first. Like, you can't have a PhD already and apply for it because you're an early stage researcher. So it's really a European EU driven kind of a scholarship. And so our funding body was European, and there's always a host university. So in this case, I applied to the University of Nottingham that had acquired that grant. And then it was their responsibility to hire and recruit students. So that was my scholarship for my research. And side by side with that, we had to adopt kind of like, it was also a job where we had to adopt like an employee role as well, a PhD student, but also an employee role. And it was nice because the scholarship had certain like how do I say this? It had certain things that had to be fulfilled, where we had to reach out, we had to be involved in some kind of STEM outreach to schools or some young children, going to schools and talking about science research. So we had to be involved in public outreach, is what they called it. We had to be involved in, like open days for the university and like that. We had to participate in international challenges. So I remember my team, we participated in the Airbus Fly Your Ideas Challenge. It's an international competition, and we got to participate and be connected with some people at Airbus and work on some development projects, which was fun. And then we had to attend a certain number of conferences and network to some extent as well. So that was the scholarship, and I think the clauses really helped to kind of achieve the things that are positive, that really help you. And we also had like a budget for professional development. So we had to accomplish a certain amount of professional or personal development per year, which was nice. In terms of awards, I would say I have like I'd say my scholarship would be the biggest one that I've done. Other than that, I attended some conferences. In my job now, I attended a research seminar that was company wide, and I got a best poster award, which was, yeah, nothing crazy, but it was nice. And yeah, that's about it, I would say.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Since you have mentioned about the scholarships and attending conferences, how important would you like to mention to our audience is networking or socializing with the relevant people to get to the job or somewhere you want to be or need to be?
I think it's one of the most important things that I've learned. Networking is so important, because often you think people will remember you because you had the best presentation or you had the best data, the best technical information. But no, people will remember you because of how you spoke to them. People will remember you because you made an effort to have a casual conversation and joke with them a little bit. People will remember you because you asked how their day was, or had a coffee with them in a conference room. And I think so during my PhD, I had to work with a company. So I did it like a placement, industrial placement, and it was really instrumental in me landing the job that I did end up getting. And even working with them, they had offered me a position as well. And it was an open dialogue, because when you work with people, and because I found that in general, even like now that I work for a company, I've been involved in some interviews where we're trying to recruit more people. At the end of after the interview, we go back and we ask ourselves, like, these people will ask, like, will they fit into our team? How will they fit into our team culturally? How will they fit into our team personality wise? Because there's, for like you mentioned it earlier, like, there in a team people clash, difference of opinion, and if people don't get along, nothing gets done. And so I think networking is really important, because people are always looking for other people that they get along with, whose personality they like. Because if you're already in a circumstance where you've met them, the chances are that you are technically capable. if you've applied, the chances are that you have the relevant skill set on your CV, you have the education, you already tick those boxes, right? But the difference between someone else who's going to get the job and you is just how you carry yourself, how you speak to people. So I think when you are at a conference, you are at like a job, like a job, like maybe a university hosts like these job opening days, and companies come. I think it's important to go to these things. Not only is it important to go to them, but it's important to be sociable, and it's important to be not to be so stiff, like just be yourself, because even you want to be identified by companies that you would fit into, right? So be yourself, be comfortable, be confident is most important, be super confident, but really make an effort to start a conversation, even if it means going up to someone and saying something first. Do it, because people will remember you. People will remember that you had the confidence to come up, chat to them, speak to them. You could also talk technical details, but you could also have a casual conversation. You carried yourself well, and then when they need to hire someone, or they'll refer you to someone else because they liked you, and so they would make a more effort to want to see you succeed. So you know I found that it's really helped me a lot in my professional career or my experiences, and I would definitely put a lot of emphasis on people to make more of an effort, to do that, because you think, oh, I have straight A's, I have a 4.0 GPA, I have all these degrees, but who's going to care if you can't hold a conversation, or you don't go and talk to someone? Nobody's going to find you from nowhere, right? So you have to meet people for them to see your accomplishments.
Sarah, I'm going to continue with something that you've just said, in terms of professional socializing and then attending meetings and networking. So during the first formal, I would say formal professional education years, which is when the students go into universities and start their bachelors. During the 4 years, they are often offered internships. And from my experience, what I've seen is that most of the students, they're not really interested in going into internships. They just simply feel like there's going to be a waste of time. We're not going to make out much out of it. And that definitely, obviously, shows a bit of a lack of understanding onto their part. How important do you think internships are, and what are you going to recommend to the young people who are going to listen to you when we talk about internships during their academic career?
I think it's so important as well. Like I did an internship every summer during my university as well. I did and I have to say they weren't the most enjoyable, because often when you're an intern, you get the kind of work that you don't want to do. You don't get very much responsibility. You don't get to participate in cool projects. Sometimes you will, and you're very lucky, but often on, it won't be the most enjoyable experience. But I think it really helps to see what jobs could look like. It could also help for you to narrow down what you don't want to do after you graduate. It could, you maybe form a relationship with a manager, where maybe like 3 years down the line he's working somewhere else, you worked really well with him, he offers you a job there or something like that. So in general, I think internships have a great opportunity for practical learning. In universities, you learn so much theoretical stuff, but if you find an internship that matches well with what you want to do, then you get to hold things. You get to hold, and as an engineer, I think seeing parts in person, holding them, looking at them, looking around it inside it makes a huge difference from looking at a drawing. So I think that's really important in general, and the aspect, like you said, of just putting yourself in positions and circumstances where you'll meet people, and then you'd either narrow down what you're interested in or not interested in, and at the same time meet people where you could be eligible for a job later, reach out to someone later. So I would say it's super important.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Now, I know you have giving back to the society by only the work you do, not only the work you do, but you have been spreading knowledge and information regarding your work as well and the importance of your work. And that's how we found you. But for my audience, I would like you to mention how you are giving back to the society and what are your future plans so that people and youngsters can get involved with you.
Sure. I think I could do better. I think I can always do better, do more with giving back in society, especially because I feel like I'm very lucky, and I'm very grateful for everything that for everyone that's helped me to get where I am. I think during my university days, we would, again, like I said, we would host these public outreach days, and we had all girls schools, schools from less fortunate areas visit the university, and there was an all Muslim girls school that visited as well, and we would basically arrange these small kind of like days where we made these little airplanes and teach them about propulsion, and we had a fan and these like silly small things. But so things like that, public outreach we used to do. I think apart from that, I don't particularly, I'm not involved in any regular activities, but what I do try to do is when I meet people or when I come across people who are applying for PhDs or trying to get into research degrees, I always try and like I'm very open to looking at your personal statement, helping you out, really trying to help you find scholarships, telling you where to look, where you could find such opportunities, what to focus on. I can share my CV, like base it on this. Look, like this is what's worked for me, and things like that. So every opportunity I do get, I try to help someone edit their personal statement, tell them where to find certain things, because sometimes you just don't know where to start. you know and like I said, I think I could always do more and do better. But if somebody approaches me and asks me for help, I will always make time to try and help someone with their application, with their PhD application, with their job application, because I haven't gotten here by myself either, and I had help. And I think it's important to always help anyone else who's in your position that you would be in before, or who can really benefit from just that little bit of experience or that little bit of advice. I think goes a long way. So for sure.
Okay, Sarah, before we move on to our last question, something that you've mentioned about specifically in terms of reaching out to people, asking for help, I'm going to ask you something which is I feel I've felt specifically being in academia and then being related to engineering and teaching engineering students, and then also somewhat being related to research. I've from my perspective, I've found a lot of people to be introverts. They find it really hard to get out of their bubble of books or probably research or academia. They're comfortable with people that they've met on the first day, and probably they're a lot hesitant in meeting new people. And specifically, once we've talked about internships and then looking out for jobs and doing networking, it definitely requires a lot of effort to put yourself out. What are one or two things that you would want to suggest to people who specifically are introverts, which is going to make it easy for them to reach out for help?
I think in general, one tip that might be helpful is find a buddy and do it together. Find a friend and do it together. When you're all by yourself, it can be very intimidating to walk into a room, like. But if you have one person with you, you have, even if you're not like in the room together like the whole time, but if you have a peer or a friend at college or university, and you both want to do the same thing, and you're not feeling super confident about it, pair up, like be like, okay, we're going to do this together. So at the end of the day, we'll go around the room, we'll talk to people, but you have that comfort of coming back and not feeling like you're standing all alone, and there's no one to talk to. You have a safety blanket, which I think could be very helpful, because it can be very intimidating to go to these events or go to these scenarios, and then, like you said, put yourself out there, talk to people. It's challenging, it's draining emotionally, especially for introverted people. So one tip could be like that, find a buddy. I think another tip could be, in general, I think I definitely back then, I'm definitely more confident now than I used to be back then, and I think confidence takes time to build in yourself. So I think instead of putting yourself in a situation where you would be really uncomfortable straight away, do it in small increments. So initially, you could reach out to people on LinkedIn, or you could reach out to people virtually, because there's so much of that opportunity happening now. And then, try to meet in smaller groups. So, like, reach out to one or two people. One on one is definitely always less intimidating than a group. So instead of like bombarding yourself with like, I'm going to go to 7 networking events and be there in person, maybe like reach out to someone in the field who's you feel could be a mentor for you, or you feel like their job is something that you would want to aspire to do one day. And then talk to them a little bit, maybe go out for coffee, like, and maybe if you have a friend from the first year, like bring them along, and do it in smaller groups before you really challenge yourself and put yourself into a really uncomfortable position. Because definitely there's growth in being uncomfortable, but you don't want to like traumatize yourself or be in a circumstance where you feel really insecure. So I think small doses, um, find support, find a friend to do it with. And I think last of all, just kind of you have to convince yourself. So you have to talk to yourself, almost like you're talking to a friend, and be like, it's going to be uncomfortable, at first. But it gets easier. The more you open up, the more confidence you gain. Slowly, it does get easier. So I think just constantly reminding yourself and remembering. You can watch motivational YouTube videos. You can, pump yourself up in that kind of way. And make sure that, I think what's really important is make sure that you wear something where you feel confident. You dress in a way that you're confident and comfortable. So, sometimes I see this a lot, like in the workplace, people will, some women, are really confident in a suit. They wear a shirt and a blazer and, formal pants. I'm not very confident dressing like that. And sometimes I feel like I should be dressing like that, but I'll be fidgeting and I'll be like adjusting my clothes, and body language is also so important. So dress in a way where it's comfortable to you. It doesn't have to be like everyone else, but you should be comfortable in it, because then you will carry yourself with confidence, and that will radiate to the other person you're talking to as well, you know. So I think that's also really, really important.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Now with our last question before Adiba starts the rapid fire round with you. What are your plans for the next 5 years?
I think I would like to stay in a technical role for the next 5 years for sure. I want to stay. Well, you never know how life goes, but my plan for myself would be that I would like to stay in a technical role, primarily in R&D. Um, Obviously, I don't want to be like in the same position, but I would like to grow for sure. But often, you get people who are in technical roles, and often you get asked, as someone who's in technical role, what's next for you? Do you want to go into like a more businessy or managerial kind of a place where you're not involved in this kind of thing, or you want to go to like a product manager role, which is sometimes the next step. Um, but I think I have a lot to learn. I have yet a lot to learn, and I think that even if it means I have slower growth, I would like to stay in a technical role, um, and get involved in more different, kind of projects, take on more projects, lead more projects. And yeah, I think my plan would be to continue to work within aerospace, but on a wider range of projects. And because it is important to move around a little bit and not stay in the same place, because I think, you stop learning. But definitely, I don't see myself in the next 5 years moving to a more product line or business kind of a role. And I would like to learn a lot more, because I feel like I do have a lot more to learn.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for giving us your time and for this wonderful session. You talked about going easy on yourself, your mechanically machined way of doing things, and your logic and reasoning over emotions, finding home out of different places, and talking about PhD being in the field, which is a very for me and for Fatma is very close to our hearts. That we always a lot of people might find it debatable, but we find it very close to our hearts that if we are pursuing PhD or someone is pursuing, that he or she should be close to the field instead of just on the other side. Thank you so much, Sarah. Now quickly, Fatma, do you have anything else to add on before we go on to the rapid fire?
Thank you, Adiba. I'm totally going to agree with everything that you've said. Sarah has given out some really, really good points, which are, I'm quite sure, not only going to help our listeners, but I've taken notes of them myself as well.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to come up, I'm definitely going to incorporate them into my own life as well, I guess. And now it's time for the rapid fire.
So, Sarah, if not research engineer, what you would have been?
I think in an alternate world, I think there's two ways I could answer that. But since it's rapid fire, I would say I would have liked to be a software engineer.
If you get to invent one thing, what will you invent? I know you are doing wonderful things.
I think environmentally friendly mode of transportation. I don't know what it would look like. Maybe it would be something super futuristic, but environmentally friendly mode of transportation,
Yeah.
because transportation does contribute so much to.
What are your favorite industry websites, books, or resources that you would like to tell to our audience?
I think they're super sector specific. So, there are many. I don't really find myself on websites very often, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I think it's a nice way to keep in touch with what's going on. In particular, I really like the Naked Scientist podcast. It's basically comes out every week. It's hosted by professors at Cambridge University, and they do lots of sections of really interesting random topics where you learn about how a refrigerator works, or if a mouse has the size of a brain compared to a human. It's really random, but it's interesting. So
Okay. Is there any favorite researcher or ideal within your field or industry that you would like to, or it might be anyone else that you would like to mention?
I mean, there's so many people whose work that I'm, so impressed by. But I have to always, the work that Sarah is doing, Sarah Qureshi is doing. I think she's just fantastic and so inspirational. And I think her work should always be highlighted.
Wonderful. If you get to change one thing globally, what it will be?
The one thing that I would like to change globally is preconceived notions of race and culture, which is something that I think all of us have struggled with and faced. So
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us with Ms. Sarah Shabbir, research engineer and early stage researcher, scholarship recipient from Marie Curie during Innovate program at University of Nottingham. If you would like to connect with her, we can connect you with Ms. Sarah Shabbir for all the mentorship and guidance she has mentioned. Thank you so much, Sarah and Padma, for joining us and giving us your time, and stay connected for another exciting international Know Your Hero series.
thank you so much to both of you. It's been a pleasure.